Hello, everyone. My name is Ben, and I'm here with Milo and Brandon, and we're going to be talking about the Coquette and the early republic and women's issues. Now, our overview and the main question has to do with men and women and how they had strict roles in the age of revolutionary society in the 18th century. We're going to be focusing on three sections. The first one is going to be women and how they're characterized by the gender norms in the Coquette. And then we're going to be focusing on the inequity of these gender roles between the relationships of Eliza and the male characters. And lastly, we're going to talk about Eliza's friends and how they exemplify the unforgiving early republic. Now, my name is Ben. My main focus was on Eliza Wharton. Eliza inhabits a world characterized by very strict gender norms. Women should be beautiful, smart, and virtuous, but not trespass any boundaries by appearing too appealing or enjoying too much of fashionable society or the company of men. They should see their worth in their roles as wives and mothers and not seek to delay or alter this role for themselves. Women in society are demoralized and seen as lesser humans. However, Eliza seeks to rebel against society and its norms. This text itself was very intriguing to read because although the main character Eliza is the focal point of the story, we are able to see the letters and other characters and their point of view. Furthermore, in my paper, I was able to utilize various examples from both Eliza and other characters in order to express my opinion on how women were treated in this era and time period. My first source was a letter from Eliza, and the specific quote that I pulled from the letter questions whether Eliza is a coquette or not. Her friends and the men who watch her and condemn her refer to her as one, but she denies the characterization. My second source is from Jeffrey Richards' The Politics of Seduction. And the entire quote explains how women were viewed as mere objects and had to be subjected to certain standards. My second source is a letter from the novella by Lucy, a friend of Eliza. And here, this quote reinforces the reality that the patriarchy is so incredibly entrenched in the 18th century that women themselves buy into the codes of conduct they are forced to adhere to. My last two sources focus on both individualism and freedom, and they are by the authors and their writings, Abram Van Ingen and Daniel Diaz Couch. And here we're able to see both how individualism and freedom both affected Eliza as a woman and as a woman in this 18th century society. Now, my final thoughts on the overall essay, the reading, and my sources. Overall, the essay is an extreme example of how women have been labeled and demoralized for slightly standing out of the norm. Eliza's character speaks volumes on how sometimes in order to seek freedom, we must step outside the norms, face our fears, and speak our mind no matter what anyone thinks. Furthermore, although she may have been seen as not only promiscuous, but a coquette among society, she was willing to go through anything in order to feel empowered and break out of society's gender norms.
Milo here, and my focus is on contextualizing Eliza's character and her experiences through an analysis of the male characters of the novella, particularly Boyer and Sanford. We see how both relationships function on a representative level as emblematic of the societal systems of early America that restrained women like Eliza. My general thoughts on their text is that I thought it to be quite engaging despite the time gap, which often proves an impediment to enjoying older works. But the timelessness of Foster's themes, particularly themes of female sexuality and the unequal way that society treats female sexuality juxtaposed with male sexuality, resonance to this day, where in modern American society, certainly male promiscuity is celebrated while female promiscuity is condemned, just as in Eliza's time. My first source came from Karen A. Weiler, Marriage, Coverture, and the Companion Ideal in the Coquette and Dorval. And Weiler's paper explores the notions of dependence the females of Wharton's time had on their male counterparts for identity construction, for societal placement, particularly how females were often viewed as a form of property. This is relevant to the Coquette, as Eliza and her sexuality are viewed as forms of property, In Boyer's case, as the sexuality belonging or due a wife to her husband, and in Sanford's case, simply as a conquest, as another notch on the belt. My second source came from Elizabeth Dill's article, A Mob of Lusty Villagers, Operations of Domestic Desires in Hannah Webster Foster's The Coquette. Dill's article explores the coquette primarily as a seduction test. It primarily deals with the sexuality present in the novel or novella, particularly the social mores regarding sexuality of the time period. Dill argues that both Sanford and Eliza are victims to their own sexual or emotional appetites, that they're essentially not in control of them, and that they are not expressions of agency or independence, which many modern interpretations see Eliza's expression of sexuality as, and it's certainly what I saw it as upon my first reading. But rather, it's a more fatalistic viewpoint, and that's how it would have been read in contemporary society from when the novel was written. My final source came from Sharon M. Harris's Hannah Webster Foster's The Coquette, Critiquing Franklin's America. And it's kind of a counterpoint to Dill's argument that Coquette was not a tome of female empowerment. Regardless, Harris sees it as fundamentally critical and subversive. She argues, quote, Foster is far less concerned with the issue of marriage than with the political system of the new republic that can envision that institution as the only opportunity for its female citizen. And here we see the novel's inherently critical nature. Whether Eliza lands Boyer or Sanford is ultimately irrelevant. The central thrust, the central thematic thrust, is that she must land a man to be seen as respectable in her society. Final thoughts on the research and the text. That, applying the research text retroactively to my impressions of the novel certainly helped me reevaluate initial conceptions of the novel, seeing it in subversive in a way I hadn't before, and undermining its subversive nature in the initial way I had it. And generally, we just see Eliza continually constrained by her society and gender roles therein.
Hi, this is Brandon. So the novella The Coquette illustrates the vast societal issues in early America. And my primary focus is in the disparity in how men and women were treated in the realm of seduction. But first, thoughts on the text. It's a very interesting read. Seeing the early American perspective through fictionalized letters, makes clear how far society has come. And we're pretty lucky to not deal with these issues now, to say the least. So my first source is A Play Beyond Words, Tyranny is Voiced in the Coquette by Julia A. Stern. And the main idea with this one was that it's not really a danger of a seductive man. That's not the true villain in the novel. The true villain is, or maybe danger, not exactly villain, is the homosocial problem. And more specifically, Eliza's friends are the real danger in the story, and that they turn their backs on her, they turn away from her, and in the end, she's left dead because of that. And one wonders what could have changed if her friends had been more supportive, which is what I wondered, and my research led me further down that path, finding violence, female friendship, and the education of the heroine in Mary Davies, The Reformed Coquette by Jan M. Stahl. So this is a source from a similar time period, analyzing a separate novel that deals with similar subject matter. And it shows how women can be protected from seductive men through the means of proper support groups, e.g. good friends, for example. The quote is, through the relationship with Altamira, Davies demonstrates that women can have the capability to protect each other from violent and abusive men. And so the relationship between Amaranda and Altamira in this novel empowers women and the bonds they have together. And interesting note, Altamira in this novel was dressed as a man, but actually a girl. So it shows, again, how limited a role women had at the time. In that to have true freedom, a woman had to pretend to be a man. And so my next source is the narrative Intrusion in Charlotte Temple a closet feminist strategy in the American novel. And so this one explores another similar novel from the time period, Charlotte Temple, and shows further like the differences in early America and how specifically it was very unforgiving and unsympathetic towards people who viewed things differently. And implies, as the title suggests, that the writer of Charlotte Temple was a closet feminist. As the argument seems to be that the narrator promotes the virtues of sympathy and pardon at what seems every possible turn, as you see in the quote. And that kind of exemplifies the whole issue at the heart of the Coquette, that there's just no sympathy for Eliza. There's no sympathy for women in any role. And there's a quote from Lucy in another letter where she's saying, reputation is everything. It's a gem that you must keep. And it shows just how important that was. There's just a lack of forgiveness that, we've moved past since then. And so, yeah, it's clear that there's a plethora of issues women face in early America. And the interpersonal issues between women seem to have been a huge issue as well as Ben and Milo's points that, there's issues with the way that men treated women, and there's the issues with society and how women were put beneath their posts and demoralized. And for a conclusion, the Coquette shows women in early America facing a plethora of gender issues, between having a demoralizing social code, men at the time taking advantage of women's vulnerable role in society, and their fellow women being unforgiving and unsympathetic. This is improved in the following centuries, exemplified now by the Me Too movement, where predatory men face consequences for their power trips, and a general growing acceptance of women expressing their own sexuality however they wish, which it's a far cry from early America, so it's a pleasant change, to say the least. And we got our work cited. So that's it. Ben, Milo, any closing remarks?
Nope.
I think we are good. And if anybody has questions, feel free to send us an email. We'll happily explain everything to you.
Yeah. Or drop a comment, like and subscribe, ring the bell.
Like and subscribe. We're going to start a YouTube channel. Heck yes.
Reviewing early American literature through feminist lenses.
Yes. Hey, 2 out of 3 of us are English majors, so we're down.
That's what, and we got a psychology major too, so we got the whole.
Oh, so he'll pick your brain while we write it.
That's it. Ring the bell. Leave a comment.
Yes. Share.
Thanks for listening.
We'll catch
Yes.
you
Thanks for listening, everyone. Whoever listened.